يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this gorgeous Saturday morning and to Let's Talk with me, Julie Ali. And I'm inviting you to keep me company until 10 o'clock. You're going to love our guests. They're going to talk about interesting and very, very diverse topics. We'll kick off by talking to Everdeen. She's the author of 8 books. She's also going to talk to us about a couple of her books. Everdeen Brickwood is our guest and we will be chatting to her in a minute or two. We'll be talking a little later on to Yvonne Munshi about brain fog, and we're also going to be looking at the Wits Food Garden. So all of that on the show this morning. We do hope you're going to become a part of the conversation. Let's introduce the lovely Everdeen to you, the author of the day, or the week, shall I say. Everdeen Brickwood, good morning, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Julie. Thanks for having me.
Lovely to have you here. Now, I know that you originate from Germany.
Yes.
In your teenage years, you traveled extensively, finally spent some time in Botswana, and then landed up in Johannesburg and landed up as a translator and lecturer at Wits University.
That's right.
Where and how did the passion for book writing start for you?
Well, that's around 15 years ago, actually, that I started writing books. My children were still small. I got married, moved to Johannesburg, got married, had children, and had a business at the time. And I wanted to do something more creative because I'm quite a creative person, and that was my outlet. And I wanted to write for children, my children's age. So I started with a series of books about time travel.
Oh, wow.
Into prehistory.
Okay, and that was obviously targeted at children.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
You've written 8 books up to now.
Actually 10.
Is it 10?
Yeah. We're talking about my 8th book today.
Okay, tell us about the other books that you've written. And obviously, when we write, creative people do stuff and express themselves, and part of what they're going through, part of their life journey is expressed in their art. And I should imagine the same thing happened with you.
Absolutely.
The stuff you were going through was expressed in your writing.
Yes.
So let's start right at the beginning then, as regards your books.
Well, the children's books, the idea started with material I had collected over many years because I studied international ethnology, that's in Germany, that's similar to cultural anthropology. And I had accumulated material on legends and, stories.
German stories?
No, from different cultures.
Okay.
And yeah, because I traveled a lot, I was really interested in other cultures, always. I spoke different languages and so on as well.
So how many languages do you speak?
Not so many anymore, because living in South Africa, what you need is really English. My Afrikaans is rudimentary, so let's not even mention that. But I used to speak English, I still speak English, French, Spanish, Greek, Urdu.
Wow.
Yeah, a smattering of Urdu. I could have a conversation. I can't do this anymore, I can just say.
Because obviously with languages you need to be in practice all the time.
That's
otherwise
right.
You kind of lose the gist of the language.
Exactly.
But it doesn't take very long for you to get back into it if you have to.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I taught French in Botswana at a private school, so I was quite good back then.
Well, I thought you were a teacher when I met you just now.
Yes, I was.
Okay, so that was your first book, and it was, like I said, it's about your life's journey. You were thinking about your children, and obviously that's a legacy that you've left for your children and your children's children. Yes. Your subsequent books?
My first novel was Well, it actually was based on my experiences in Botswana. Because I moved to Botswana before I came to South Africa, and it's loosely based on my experiences, but the fiction story is quite different to what I experienced myself. So that was my first novel.
And obviously the type of response you received from your novel gave you the confidence to move forward and to say to you that, hey, I can do this. I am an author and there are plenty more stories for me to tell. So then onto your journey, what came after that?
After that came, well, I translate, because I'm actually a qualified translator, so I translate my books into German as well. I write them in English. I find it easier because I hear English every day, I use English every day, and then I translate my books into German. So I'm also in the German market. So I translated The Singing Lizards into German.
That was the book you wrote about Botswana.
That's right. And after that came...
Before you proceed, how do the German readers respond to your writings of the African continent, the African cultures, etc.?
It's very exotic for them. They're getting used to it now because there are not many authors in Germany who write about Africa. Africa is still the dark continent. It's still a bit mystical, mysterious, and so they weren't really used to these kind of books. But I do go on book fairs, I do go on book tours to Germany, and I do speak to readers, and they're getting used to my books now.
What an exciting life!
Well, yeah.
And then after The Singing Lizard, what came next? And what was happening for you at the time that you decided, hey, I've got great feedback on my previous book, I can and I must put pen to paper and tell this particular story?
The next book was my most autobiographical book. It's called A Half Moon Adventure, and it's the only book that I've written in German first, because when I experienced all these things as a teenager in Germany, German was the language I experienced my story in. So I wrote it in German and then translated it into English.
What was that all about?
I was quite, I would say, rebellious as a teenager, because I grew up in a very conservative environment and I wasn't allowed to do this and that, and I wanted to meet people of different cultures and different religions, and it was frowned upon. So I wanted to travel, and I wanted to just lead my own kind of life, and I did that. I went to Pakistan for a wedding. I was invited to a wedding.
How did you meet your Pakistani friends? Was this a meeting in Germany?
In
Is
Germany.
that how it grew?
Yes, in Germany. But of course, a lot of Pakistanis are also based in England. I traveled a lot. I traveled to England, I traveled to Greece, I traveled to France, I traveled all over the place. I had Algerian friends and Moroccan friends.
And your world just grew bigger and bigger and bigger.
That's right. So I had to, in a way, be very strong-headed, strong-minded, in order to be able to do that. Because
and this book, this journey of yours, Half Moon Adventure, was obviously it's a semi-autobiography.
That's right.
Why was it so important to tell the story, and what was your experience like in Pakistan?
It was important for me because it was part of my life, and I felt that people in Pakistan were so friendly and very similar to people that I knew in Germany, just with a different background, different environment. And people didn't believe me. Like, whenever I told people about my experiences in Pakistan, they actually didn't even believe that I was there, because it was so exotic for them that they couldn't imagine somebody like me, a young woman, going there basically on her own and having all these experiences.
How long ago was this?
That was in 1981.
Okay. What was fascinating and beautiful in Pakistan, and how did it shape your life as a human being going forward?
I think I had a very inquisitive mind, and I observed a lot, and I tried to learn the language to be able to speak to the women, because they couldn't speak English, most of them. So I tried to get an inside story. How do they live? How do they think? And I lived in a village called Kadriala in Punjab, close to Jhelum, and my instinct was to just live how these people live.
Like the locals.
Like the locals, exactly, and not have great expectations, because I came from a first world country, and obviously in the village in Pakistan it was nothing like that. There weren't even toilets. But
how did you adapt to that situation?
Well, I was quite astonished, I must say. The women went out in the evening into the fields and did their business there, and the men in the morning. So I didn't know about that. Nobody had told me about it. So I didn't know what was going to happen when they took me out to the field. You weren't allowed to do any business in or around the village. So.
We're talking personal hygiene, of course.
Yes. But they did have washrooms, which was good. Okay. You could lock them as well.
Let's go for our first ad break. We'll come back and talk some more about your current books and all the other books that have shaped you, dearest Everdeen Brickwood. We're talking books this morning. Everdeen Brickwood has written 10 books. She's here to talk about her journey, and has also agreed with me that every book that she put down, every time she put pen to paper, she was giving of herself. It was the experience she was going through in life at the moment, and she needed to capture all of that for posterity. What else? Let's go for an ad break. We'll be back in a minute or two. Welcome back. We're talking to the very interesting Everdeen Brickwood. What a fascinating life this woman's had. She's sharing all of those experiences with us. And if you want to learn more about her and her amazing adventures, please go out and buy her books. We're going to talk a little later on about her second last book that she's penned, and it's called The Rhino Whisperer. How long did you spend in Pakistan?
2 months.
2 months, but enough for you to have made an absolutely lasting impression in your life.
Absolutely.
And of course, then you went on and you wrote the book, A Half Moon Adventure. Why the title Half Moon?
Because the flag of Pakistan has got a half moon on it.
Okay, the crescent moon.
That's right.
Right.
And I wanted to capture that.
Okay. The book after that?
The book after the Half Moon Adventure, I think I kept writing the series, the children's series.
Okay.
So it was the second book and the third book. I was in England in 2008. I was invited by the British Society of Authors to take part in a meeting of children's authors in Cambridge. So I was one of the speakers there.
So how many children's books have you written in total?
Well, so far 3,
Right.
and because I had to start writing novels as well.
Right.
There was a crash in the industry, when in the publishing industry in 2008, when everything crashed, the economy, and Random House in London suggested that I should start writing adult books. This is actually how I started writing my adult novels.
Were you intimidated by that at all?
I felt a little bit like a fish out of water at first, but I think I actually got into it quite nicely.
And now you're telling the most amazing stories. Let's go
Yes.
back to your children's books. And you started writing for a particular purpose. You wanted to leave a legacy for your girls.
Yes.
They are grown up now.
Yes.
What was their response at the time when you wrote the books and they read it? And now in retrospect, what do they say to you?
Well, at the time, they didn't want to read my books.
Really?
No. They were 8 and 10 at the time, and they didn't want to hurt my feelings in case they don't like the books.
Sweet.
My little one, she was 8 at the time. She's 20, almost 23 now. She tried to proofread my manuscripts at 8, but it was, of course, too advanced for her to do.
Right.
But then she said, look, I don't want to hurt your feelings in case I don't like the books. And my older daughter, she was into Twilight or something at the time, and Harry Potter and this sort of thing. My girls read a lot, but Mom's books were, yeah.
But now, what do they have
now
to say?
Now they proofread my books. My older daughter, she's 25 now and married. She's an auditor. And she proofreads my books.
Wow. And your younger daughter?
She studies microbiology at Wits.
Wonderful, wonderful. They must be so proud of you.
Now they are, yes. But in the beginning, I think they were a little embarrassed by what Mom's doing, because people stopped me at school and wanted to know about the books. And they...
Okay, so back to the books. 3 children's books, and the balance are obviously adult books.
Yes.
And they're all works of fiction, apart from the one book which was semi-biography, autobiography, and that was Half Mood Adventure. From all of these books, apart from the children's books, which one stands out for you? Which one would you say? And it's difficult to kind of choose almost a favorite, but which one is perhaps a little more special for you, and why?
I would say A Half Moon Adventure, to go back to the same book, because there's so much of myself in the book and what I experienced in Pakistan. And what I wanted to do was show people that it's not what they think it is. I also went to Pakistan the year before, or 2 years prior to that. I was invited to Christmas in America, and I also had positive and negative experiences there, and I'm trying to counterbalance that with what I experienced in Pakistan. I want to show that it's not black and white. The world has got so many colors, and
absolutely,
there's so many things that play into your experiences.
And embrace it, because if you embrace it, your life will be so much fuller and richer.
Yes.
The Rhino Whisperer. Now, I've heard of the Horse Whisperer. We've heard amazing things about horse whisperers. People, Native Americans, when I say Native Americans, I'm referring to the Red Indians, obviously. They were big on horse whispering. They believed in the healing powers of horse whispering. Where and how did the Rhino Whisperer come about? Why did you choose that title, and what is the book all about?
I chose the title actually when I was finished writing the book. What I wanted to focus on in the story was more the difference between life in the country and life in the city, and the crimes that we experience in South Africa, but at a level that is not gruesome. And you know, I don't want people to put my book down and say, oh my word, you know, I don't want to read stories like that, because we have enough troubles as it is. So they're more uplifting. I always try and put something uplifting in it.
It is a love story, is it not?
It's part of it. we call those side story arcs. So I developed different story arcs. It was an organic process. And I wrote half the book after I came back from Germany from a book tour and a book fair. And I finished the book in 2 months. That's rather quick. And before then, I wasn't so sure where I wanted to take the story. And the Rhino Whisperer, of course, it has an African flavor, not much like the Red Indians with the horses, but it's more African, the African way of doing things.
Mm-hmm. What was going on for you at that point in your life that this book became a reality? And why the title, The Rhino Whisperer? Because you say you came upon the title after the completion of the book.
Yes.
The title suggests to me that you're an animal lover. Absolutely. And possibly the plight of the rhinos is a big thing with you.
That's right. I wanted to draw attention to the plight of the rhinos, which was rampant. I mean...
do you talk about it in the book?
I do. It starts off with, my books often start off very slowly and painting the picture, and you feel almost lulled into this beautiful landscape that I describe, which is
and
wonderful.
that's important. You need that landscape to get readers hooked into the book.
Yes,
and you need to have you need to have a very active imagination to be able to do that. So I applaud you for that. I've always threatened that I'd write a book, but I don't have it in me to do all the landscaping, etc. And you've got to have an eye and a mind for all of those little details. People, young and upcoming authors, what would your advice be to them in terms of inspiration and putting thought down on paper?
My advice is just do it. Rather write a bad book that you can edit and improve on than no book at all. Because I've been asked to mentor young authors or authors who did not even manage to put one page together, and I was supposed to hold their hand and tell them how to write it, and it doesn't work that way, because it has to come from yourself. Whatever is inside of you, what you want to share with the world, I think that should go on paper. And even if it's not perfect, it doesn't matter. You can always edit and proofread and change things around. This is what editors do in any case. Mm-hmm. So just do it.
Which bruises the author, but that's an editor's job. You've got to make it readable and yes, obviously appealing and attractive enough for the reader.
Yes.
You've probably had a couple of books or manuscripts rejected.
I did. Mm-hmm. I did. My first manuscript was accepted very quickly, strangely, because it's not about South Africa. And in those days, I think today as well, you have to write about South Africa in order to get accepted. And my book was about prehistory and time travel and children, and children's books were not in at the moment when I sent the manuscript out. So I didn't see much of a chance of getting accepted, but I did get accepted, and the manuscript did raise that level of attention with book editors, book publishers.
When you get rejected, a lot of people believe this is the end of the road. I'm not going to pursue this dream any longer. What would you say to that?
I've been rejected so many times. Yeah, it's in marketing, we call it that, every no takes you closer to a yes.
Absolutely.
So you have to accept the no's and learn from those no's. And very often editors send you a description of what they took away from your manuscript and what you should improve. I'm not sure if they still do it, because I'm self-editing now and self-publishing, which I wasn't. I had 2 publishers in South Africa at first. But I know that people are crushed when their books are rejected. And one avenue, of course, is to self-publish, but you have to do it professionally. I have a professional team around me. I have editors, proofreaders, designers, promoters, and all of that. Or you write it to the specifications, if you like, of the publisher. Absolutely. And then go the publishing route.
Okay, we've come to the end of the interview. In closing, what would you like to say to us, and what is in the pipeline as far as your next book is concerned?
What's in the pipeline is a series of crime mysteries set in South Africa, very South African, with a slightly paranormal aspect to it. Yes, I'm busy with the concept of it, and I would like to say, read my books.
Absolutely.
And I'm very accessible, so if you would like to discuss the books with me, I'm accessible.
Wonderful.
I'm on social media.
Evelyn Brickwood, lovely having you in studio, and we're going to urge the viewers to go out, buy her books, read them, and interact with her via her social media platforms. You will find her, just Google her name, Everdeen Brickwood, and I think you're going to enjoy interacting with her. Don't go away, we still have lots more amazing guests coming your way this morning. Welcome back, and we're now going to be talking to an amazing lady that has embraced all of the alternative therapies that you can think about. She is into NLP, life coaching, and she says she is here to heal our beautiful country. She lives and works just 10 minutes out of Lodium in Pretoria, of course. Her name is Yvonne Munshi, and for today's program, we're going to concentrate on something called brain fog. I've had lots of those moments. Let's unpack it and see how we can overcome this thing called brain fog. Yvonne Munshi, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Morning, Julie. Thank you for having me here.
Lovely to have you here, and very pleased that you're going to be discussing this, because oftentimes you have those brain fog moments, is what I refer to it, and you worry and you wonder, does this perhaps mean that I'm heading for Alzheimer's or some form of dementia? And I think older people do have that fear from time to time. So as a hypnotherapist, an NLP practitioner and a life coach, how did you happen on brain fog?
Well, brain fog affects people of all ages. Adults,
even young people?
Even young people. So we're talking about students, mature students that are heading for prelims and matric and into university. And they suffer from brain fog as well. And then we know of burnouts of middle age, 40, 50, and then menopause. And so brain fog really does affect us all through life. But there are typical areas. And if we look at adolescence and we look at menopause and burnout in men, we get an inkling that it has to do with neurotransmitters and hormones. So brain chemicals.
Is this a medical condition?
Yes, it can be. So we need to actually look at the symptoms and then go and investigate where on the scale we find ourselves.
And then if there is intervention that needs to be put into place, medical intervention, I should imagine that will happen. But we'll get to that in due course.
Correct.
What is brain fog? If I suggest to you I'm having a brain fog moment, I should imagine there's no such thing.
No, it's used a little bit
too loosely.
Yeah, too loosely. It's a good way of putting it. In the DSM, that means the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. Historically, brain fog was actually synonymous to delirium.
Oh,
okay. It has subsequently been renamed as a clouding of consciousness. And that has been coined by a German who says there is a darkening of consciousness. And we can understand that almost like a cloud descending on consciousness. It's a little bit like darkening the room, drawing the curtain. And that means it's affecting our consciousness, which means it's affecting our mind. So we've got physical health, and then we've got mental health. And here we're talking mental health. However, if this goes on long enough or too long, it can become a physical problem.
as well.
Yes, as well. So we need to understand the symptoms. We need to know the symptoms and then know what we can do about them. And I think it is important for parents to know that, because a lot of teenagers and young adults in university, they suffer from that. I mean, a friend of mine's daughter just recently came to stay with us, and she said in their faculty alone, in the last month, 8 suicides. Wow. Oh. Okay, so it can be very severe, and we need to know where are we standing.
Okay, so if I go to a doctor and I explain my symptoms, which you're going to talk about in a minute or two, is he going to diagnose me with perhaps physical and mental fatigue? Is he going to say to me that you're suffering from brain fog? Or is he going to say to me there's some sort of a mental disorder, we need to perhaps investigate it further? So let's start with symptoms, and then you can respond to the doctor's questions.
Yes. Remember, when we're talking mental disorder, it means there is an imbalance in our mental state. And the imbalance has to do with it starts with our thinking, does it not? Because the thinking has a strong impact on our physical.
Our actions.
Yes, that's right. So first symptoms I would like to say, inattention. And that seems very innocuous, right? Inattention, well, we all have moments of inattention. But let's say if we're a student and we're trying to study for matric, and we cannot be attentive to the task at hand, okay? And we start having the mind that's going all over the place. Yes, wanders off. So we have lack of concentration, lack of focus, and therefore we cannot memorize. We have now lack of memory, and the study material doesn't make sense. It's not going in. It's just flowing out. We want that to flow into the brain. We need to be able to recall what we're studying. So when we have these symptoms, we might know that there's something wrong, and the parent should pick up on that. But parents, what do? They can't help themselves. They know what's at stake with matric. So they need they want their child to perform, to achieve, to be successful. And very often what happens then is we take the privileges away, okay? And
they punish the
child, study more, study harder, study longer.
Exacerbating the situation.
Exactly. Now, if there is an actual situation where the child is suffering from brain fog, which we can also say mental fatigue, that's not just being tired. It is a problem.
Okay, so Yvonne, we're talking matric students and possibly adolescents
and young adults.
Right
now.
How does this, we're hearing about, in this day and age, we hear a lot about ADHD, we hear about, we know that we live in very stressful times, we know that there's busyness around us all of the time.
Very, very, yeah.
And the inattentiveness could be put down to those issues.
Could be, yes. So
how do we distinguish?
Okay, so we need to go by elimination. If you have a child that's having these problems, the parent, instead of punishing and taking privileges away, needs to understand if the brain is fatigued, the brain actually needs a break. And that's counterintuitive, because if I'm not managing and the exams are looming and I need to study and I haven't finished all my quota, how can I take a break? But we have to understand that if the brain doesn't get a break, it cannot function. So actually putting more time in, but with less results. So why do you think in schools they take an hour of lesson and then they force you for a 5-minute break? It's to give that brain the break it needs. Right. Because imagine it's a little bit like a workbench. During the hour you load a lot of stuff onto that workbench until it's overflowing with stuff. If you don't take a break, you keep adding, well, it's just going to fall off the bench and fall on the floor. You're not going to find what you need on the floor. You're going to look on the bench. So the short break allows the brain to shunt whatever is in short-term memory and put it into long-term memory, because that's where we need it. From long-term memory, we will recall it during exams. So firstly, we therefore need to encourage our child to make a program and say, okay, 8 to 9 or 8 to 8:55. Then an alarm on the phone goes and say, okay, we have 5 minutes break. Not 50 minutes, 5 minutes. Get outside, get fresh air, move. Why movement? Well, movement brings more oxygen, therefore more nutrients to the brain.
And possibly water.
Absolutely. You said, because one of the big problems with brain fog can be just simply dehydration.
And I think we're not drinking enough water.
No, we don't.
We'd rather go for the fizzy and sweetened drinks.
And that is a no-no. The sweet stuff is a no-no during studies. We don't want that, because that is, we need to look, one of the points is also nutrition, diet, that we need to look at. So the first thing is, let's go back to the symptoms. Inattention, focus problems, concentration problems, and comprehension problems, memory problems, okay? So we need to look at the causes. We said dehydration, but one of the biggest ones is stress. So if you force somebody to study more and more, you're just increasing the stress. So we need to understand stress is one of the biggest contributors. brain
Okay,
fog.
let's go for our first ad break. When we come back, let's understand how you work with people who suffer from brain fog, young people and older people, because I should imagine the issues are slightly different. How do we work with them, and are you seeing results?
Yes.
Yvonne Munshi is our guest. She's an NLP practitioner, life coach, and she also does a bit of hypnotherapy. She's here talking to us about brain fog, very especially in this day and age, and very especially at this time of year when everyone's busy sitting their exams. Don't go away, we'll be back in a minute or two. We're talking brain fog with Yvonne Munshi. She practices from her home, which is just a little outside of Lodium in Pretoria. Stay tuned, you're going to find this very interesting. You said to me that there are about 6 symptoms that we need to look out for, and very especially this time of year, I think parents need to be on top of their game to be able to assist their children over this very, very stressful time. What are the other symptoms?
So we said dehydration, stress, stress and diet. We might just be having vitamin B deficiencies. Nutrition can play a big role.
And we know our children and we eat a lot of junk food.
Yeah, that's right. So we need to go back to a healthy fruit, vegetable, fatty fish, because we need fatty acids for the brain. It needs a lot of omegas.
What about if we supplement with the omega-3, 6s and 9s?
Absolutely important.
Good
in this
idea.
time. Absolutely important, yes. And then we do need to eliminate whether there is a medical condition. So if all of the other doesn't seem to, if everything else is in place, if there's no stress or dietary issues, there could be dietary allergies, and those allergies can be tested. There can be allergies to medication. I had a client that for years suffered from fainting, and that's a young adult, couldn't understand why, and finally it was an allergy to one of the medication that was given to her as an adolescent already. And then we need to look at, is there a medical condition underneath it? Diabetes, so sugar needs to be tested, could be hypothyroidism, which is also stress related, inflammation, or even immune problems. So that's kind of the order of hierarchy that I would say. And then the parent and the student itself has got a big role to play. Parent allowing time for sports. Why sports? Because sports ups those brain chemicals that are out of balance. We need the dopamine, the serotonin, the endorphins and oxytocin. All of these get released when we do sport. You know, the runner's high. Okay, when that's in balance, we get into flow. Ideally, we want to be in flow when we study.
So we don't stop the sporting and fun activities at all during exam time. We allow for all of that. We build it into the daily program.
Absolutely.
So that you know you've got a whole person sitting here and giving of their whole selves.
Yes. You know, even being with your friends has to have time in this period, because that gets oxytocin to flow. Oxytocin is important for memory integration. If you cannot bond with your friends, that inhibits integration of what you're learning as well. So every little bit contributes to an overall mental balanced state, and then the brain fog should go away. So it's very important to structure the day and actually have a written program, what's happening where. And you probably know yourself, when you set yourself a task and you finish that task, you feel good. Why?
Oh, absolutely.
Because dopamine is flowing in your brain. And after that, you have to have a reward. Have a break. Go out in nature, have a walk, maybe 15 minutes, or call your friend, have a chat, go and see a friend if you're close by friends. It's important. And that all contributes then to being in a better balanced mind state, so that you can actually focus on task. And what's important, oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine, going out into the sun, melatonin reacts with the sun, you have better sleep. So when these brain chemicals are back in sync with each other, sleep is restored. And sleep is another point that is very, very important. Get 8 hours of sleep. But when you're so stressed, one of the big symptoms is, I can't sleep. So it's important that the student comes for some therapy, learns some study methods, learns relaxation techniques, and how to structure their day and how to get into that flow. And that is something as a therapist you can teach a student.
So what age do you target the students? Is it a specific age that you take them in?
Well, for this particular problem, it's usually teenagers.
Okay, and how much time would they have to spend with you? And you're also talking about specific targets that needs to be reached. So how much time are they going to spend with you?
About 2 or 3 sessions. That's
An
enough.
hour long?
Well, the first session is usually about 1.5 to 2 hours, just to get to know each other and to know the history, so that I can, through good questioning, I can discern where the problem is. Because we have to understand there is very often a subconscious driver. Why does not everyone get brain fog? Okay, why does one student browse through it and without any problem, and another one comes into this highly stressed state? There has to be a subconscious dividing line, a motivator that pushes you into this. And that's then my job to find out what is that, because what is sitting in the subconscious mind is about 95% of what drives us. We're only about 5% conscious of what we're thinking. So if 95% in your subconscious mind is driven by something that you're not even aware of, programming from small, and that can be something as simple as parents saying, you can do better than this. Well, what does the child understand with this? The parent says it because the parent can see the potential of the child. The child hasn't got the archive material for that. It only hears, I could do better than this.
Which means I'm not good enough.
I am not good enough.
Right.
And when that embeds itself, that becomes a break all through study time. I'm not good enough. How can I ever achieve this? Because I am not good enough. And that's a subconscious belief.
How do you break that down in therapy? So let's assume you've got a 16-year or a 14-year-old who has this limiting self-belief of self. In 3 hours or a couple of sessions, how do you break that down? And do they truly buy then into that concept?
Yes, they do. Because remember, the techniques that I use are there to kind of distract the conscious mind and push the conscious mind a little bit to the side so we actually can get through. It's a little bit like if you had a Rottweiler at the gate and you want to get in. You throw the Rottweiler some meat there and he runs, then you get into the gate. That's a bit the entry point into the subconscious mind, and I have my techniques for that.
Obviously.
So when I get to the subconscious mind, that part of the brain that is occupied with oh, I can't do this, or I can do this, or occupied with self, or occupied with appearances, kind of is over there. And we leave it over there. And we can get to the subconscious mind where the real problem sits. And then we can, through questioning, go backwards in time until we find, through what my client says to me, she or he will actually come by himself to that point where that has actually started. And when that person gets to that point, then we need to, you see that frame there out the window? We need to put a different frame on that. We need to find the wisdom in that, change it and put a different frame or a different filter. You might walk around with a red filter, we put a green filter on. And the red light stops you, the green light gets you going.
Now we're into possibly the middle of the exams already.
Yes.
Is it too late to work with someone? Let's assume they've written 3 papers already, and the balance still needs to be done. Is it too late for them?
It's never too late, Julie. It's never too late. Because remember, life also doesn't stop tomorrow just because there's exams now. Okay, exams carry on.
Is there not too much of a burden or information overload?
No.
They're stressing about exams anyway as it is, and they need to come and spend a couple of hours with you to help them over brain fog.
Remember,
will they manage?
If you can reduce that stress, then you will be more effective in your study. So you've gained time by spending some time. It's the same thing like go and do some sports. It makes your brain more effective because those chemicals, the good chemicals that we need to study, start flowing. So instead of studying 5 hours for preparing a math test, you'll spend 1 hour or 2 hours. So you've gained 2 or 3 hours. Does that make sense?
Have you had situations where you've had to work with young people and you just can't seem to break the cycle of limiting self-beliefs and this person being almost in a perpetual state of brain fog? Has that happened? And if it has happened, what's the next step in getting this person overcome their limiting self-beliefs or this corner that they've painted themselves into?
Well, it can be, if it's really severe, it would maybe mean that the person should at the same time see a doctor. Okay, possibly the child needs to go or the student needs to go onto a temporary antidepressant or whatever the doctors, if the child is suffering from depression, it might be an antidepressant. If it's suffering from hypothyroidism, it might need a thyroid medication, or if it's diabetes or inflammation, the doctor will know the appropriate action. That doesn't mean that we do not carry on with the mental work, because the mental work has to happen at the same time. Remember at the beginning we said when the mental state goes too long unattended, a physical problem can develop. So we address the physical, but we also carry on addressing the mental problem. So it can be that we need to see and work longer for a longer period of time. But generally, if it's not a deep entrenched medical issue, then a few sessions are enough.
And in closing the interview now, in terms of, and I think you alluded to it at the beginning of the show, we are seeing more and more depression in younger and younger children. And the more they present with, even if it's mild depression, it is holding them back, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Can they overcome their depression just via the coaching sessions with you?
Yes, absolutely.
And not medication?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, yes, because I'm not very pro medication, I must admit. In fact, I'm quite anti. But the right medication at the right time has its place. Okay, but I think there's another point to point out here. And that is parents. They have another very big role, because we are living in a negative society, in a negative world, Julie, where we actually don't realize how negatively we talk. We use language negatively.
Oh, true.
Like just to say, don't forget to take the keys along. Well, start becoming aware of that. Say, remember to take your keys along. Why is that important? Yeah. The subconscious mind, which is 95% that governs us, doesn't hear the word don't. It hears forget the keys. So it will remember forget the keys. Don't remember to take your bag to school or your lunch to school. What do? They leave their lunch at home.
Absolutely.
And from there onwards, it goes into big. So parents actually need to be coached how to talk to their teens.
I mean, I covered this on the previous program as well about little kids.
Yes.
No, we're always saying no to them.
Correct.
Because we don't want them to hurt themselves. So what they're hearing from us all the time is negativity. No, don't do that, don't do that, don't go there, etc. Don't eat that, don't touch that.
And it's actually having disastrous effects.
Absolutely.
Yes.
In closing, what would you like to say to all of our matriculants and, of course, our uni students sitting their exams?
Yes. Take frequent breaks, even if it's just 5 minutes. Get up, get some fresh air, go and drink some water, have a fruit, do just a few stretching to get some oxygen into that brain. Make your program such that you can include some time with friends to hang out. Even if it's a short while, it doesn't have to be for hours. If during the year you hang out for 5 hours, now maybe you hang out for an hour. But give yourself that time, because it's important. Go and do exercise. It's vital to get those brain chemicals flowing that you need for your studies.
And believe in yourself.
Absolutely. So if you have problems with that, go and see a therapist.
There you go. And this is the therapist you need to go to. Her name is Yvonne Munshi. She's based just about 10 kilometers outside of Lodium in Pretoria. We were talking brain fog this morning, very especially at this point in time where all the students are busy sitting their exams. Don't go away. We still have lots more to talk about. We're going to look at the issue around the Wits vegetable garden. Why is that important? Well, they're here to tell us about it. And welcome back. In the final segment of the show this morning, we're talking to a WITS student. She should actually be at WITS, busy studying, getting ready for the exams, but she's taking time out to be here to talk about the amazing projects that she's involved in at WITS University. And she is Khalida Mohammed. She's the executive member of Inala. She's going to tell us about Inala and, very importantly, the WITS vegetable garden. Now, when you drive past any university, WITS especially, you look at all these students walking around, doing their thing in the immediate surrounds, and never does the thought of hunger cross your mind, because the perception one gets is he or she has made it to university, they probably have a bursary, they're being well looked after, or possibly come from a well enough family to be able to have their child at university. So the issue around accommodation, transport and food security issues are totally out of your mind, and you don't even give thought to the fact that these perhaps might be very, very needy students, and if they don't get those very basic needs of theirs met, then they're going to drop out at some point in their university life, and that is a resource lost to us as South Africa in a country. Let's hear what Khalida Mohammed has to say about this issue. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Alaikum assalam, jazakallah for having me here.
It's great to have you here, and also I thank you indeed for taking time out. You're a first year uni student. You should be at campus busy either writing or studying, but obviously your heart's in the right place. Why are you involved with Inala?
Inala is it's something that reaches out to everybody. It doesn't matter what race you are, it doesn't matter what gender you are, what culture you come from, what religion you follow. It's literally about food sovereignty and climate justice. So it was started around the end of 2015 by Professor Vishwas Satakhar, along with a few international relations students. And basically their aim is to basically reach out to students and help provide food for them, but not just provide food for them, but also to give them skills that they can take home and then start their own gardens, and they could obviously educate their families. And it's not just the students we're kind of focusing on, we're looking at the broader picture, because Absolutely. A happy home is a happy student. I mean, if you alone are eating and your parents and your siblings are struggling, you're not going to feel okay with it, and you might just give your food to them. It's also, we're not only focused on WITS students, we're also focused on WITS staff. We focused on essentially anybody that's hungry. How do I put it? So we started, for example, with our West Campus Garden, and then we get a whole lot of collaborations, for example, with COPAC and with WCCO, and we
Okay, let me stop you there. Who and what is COPAC?
Oh, that's a very difficult question. But COPAC is a COPAC something alliance, policy alliance thing. I'm very, very new to Inala. I joined in the beginning of the year, alhamdulillah.
No problem, but also congratulations. I understand you with the Muslim Students Association. And you're also with another organization at WITS called Assist. We'll come back to the food sovereignty situation, because it's not only huge on campus, you're being made aware of this issue, but we do know that it reflects what's happening in the broader society.
Yes.
Let's go to the Muslim Students Association. How active are they? They've been around for a very, very long time. How are you active with them, and how active are they in their different spaces?
So I'm on the subcommittee of the MSA for the East Campus, West Campus scenario, not the Mid Campus. I haven't really been that involved because there haven't really been much things that have been going on. I know, for example, during Ramadan, the MSA provides an iftar at the musalla, I'm not really sure what you want to call it.
Musalla.
Yes, musalla, and anybody can come and can bring food and everybody shares it.
And is that well attended?
Yes, I would say it's probably well attended, because I attended a few of them myself, because I was at campus late as well. There wasn't really any fee even to go. Like, the only fee that essentially MSA charges you is that joining fee for the year, and that is just to keep them running and going. And there was a lot of Muslim girls, a lot of Muslim guys. Obviously, it's separated, but there was dates and there was just like food, and everyone brought food and we all shared, alhamdulillah. Also, they provided seri for students that could not afford seri, to like get by seri, and for the res students, that because obviously the res people don't wake up 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning for seri. And so like that was like a cute pack. It had like dates, and I think there was milk and porridge and sugar and like, you know, your basic things. So I think the MSA, it's that we are in collaboration with the MSA. We took over the little garden space in front there, and then we also got a lot of volunteers from the MSA to come and plant some gardens and
this is
like vegetables.
the food garden that you're talking about.
One of the food gardens.
All right, so they're also involved.
Yes, we are also involved with them.
How, you know, you talk food garden and one tries to picture how big a piece of ground do you need to feed X amount of people. And you
yes.
say it started in 2015. I'm really pleased and encouraged to hear that we're almost at the end of 2018 and it is still running.
Yes.
That obviously suggests that it is hugely successful and that there is a huge need for the vegetable garden.
There definitely is a huge need for it. You'll find that one of our policies of Inala is that when you come to volunteer, because you don't have to be a member of Inala, you can be anybody, and you just come and volunteer at the gardens, whichever garden it may be. And if you work, for example, on the gardens for 1.5 hours, and you're like, it can just be watering the garden. You could be learning how to deroot the stuff properly. You could be learning how to plant properly, like that type of thing, how to maintain. You could even be just standing around and talking and gaining knowledge, but essentially with the garden, and you would be able to take a bag of vegetables home. No
and
charge.
what would that bag contain?
Whatever's being grown and whatever's being harvested on that day. So let's say, for example, thinking of the West Garden that we currently have running. So we have spinach, we had cabbage, we had, I think, onions, we had lettuce, if I'm not mistaken. We had quite a few things. So essentially, we're trying to keep the garden always functioning through every single season. So once it's the season for X has passed and we harvested those, we like give it probably about a day or two for the soil to rest and to get back its, you know, the nutrients and stuff, and then we will plant again. And so the garden is always full of vegetables.
How big is the garden?
Oh, I would have to say rough, I'm probably very wrong, but 50 meters by 2.
And you keep referring to it as gardens in the plural.
Yes.
So is that suggesting that these gardens, these food gardens, all around the campus of Wits University?
So that's one of Inala's bigger picture goals, futuristic goals. It's also part of the green proposal that we have with COPAC and the WCCO. Essentially, what we're aiming to do is to take whatever bare land that's not being used, or any space that's not being used, and we want to turn it into something that's productive, that can be used. It's like the MSA garden, like it was just a bare patch of grass that was there and nobody went there. It was just sand and it just didn't look appealing either. And so we approached them and we asked them, can we please have the space to garden, like, you know, start a garden. Like if you want to harvest there, you can harvest. We run basically throughout the week because we understand students' lives are hectic and miserable and we just don't have time to do anything. So nobody wants to come to varsity on a weekend, but you'll find it's quite full on a weekend anyway. But so you'll find, for example, during the day or during the week, like during lunchtime, for example, you'll find students at the gardens maintaining the gardens. You'll find on Saturdays from 9 to 12.
Is it free and open to all, or do you
It's
have
open to
a
everybody.
form of a roster, just so that you don't have a situation where on the one weekend you have an overcrowding of volunteers, and the next day you have nobody. So I'm just wondering the management of it, because it would make sense to kind of, without being too authoritarian,
Yes.
manage it in a way that you always have presence there.
We did struggle initially with the West Side Garden because nobody knows where the garden is. It's so hidden because it's sad because when you walk into university, nobody thinks people are struggling in terms of hunger. It's more in terms of finance. And when you tell somebody, oh my God, there's a sanctuary, they're like, what is the sanctuary? And then that's the food place where you can go and get food. And they, what do you mean? They've like flabbergasted by this type of things. And what Inala wants to do is we want to raise awareness of food, like the food insecurity that's happening in all universities in South Africa.
All right, hold that thought. We'll be back in a minute or two. I'm talking to Khalida Mohammed. She's from Wits University, first year student, talking about Inala and the food gardens at Wits University. I'm sure this is being replicated throughout universities in the country. We'll talk some more right after the ad break. We're talking to Khalida Mohammed. She is an executive member at Inala. We're going to ask her, what does Inala stand for? She's also on the MSA, and she's with another organization also at Wits called Assist. We're talking food gardens at Wits University. Are they serving the purpose? Are the people who truly need them accessing it and are being fed out of those gardens? Your response?
I think that they are. Because we are in collaboration with the WCCO, which runs the sanctuary, which is the communal kitchen on Wits University.
And that's a great thing. There's a communal kitchen just off the gardens, which means that the
not
students
really off the gardens, but there
close
is a
to the
garden that is
close
there.
to the gardens, which means that the students could then reap the harvest, go straight into the kitchen and prepare their meal.
Yes, essentially that's what we're going towards. That is what our green proposal is working towards. We currently have one running at the sanctuary with the WCCO. So we also kind of took over the gardens in the front there and the decorative spaces to kind of make it a vegetable garden, so that the people and the students can like reap that harvest and obviously make food with them, or either take it home and provide for their families, obviously. But there's always a lunch. It's actually just behind the matrix, so those that can't afford food or can't bring food, they go there, and there's always like a very long line.
Is that a lunch that's provided to the students?
Yes.
By whom?
By the WCCO.
WCCO meaning?
Wits Citizens and Communal Organization.
Wow. So for how many so they serve a hot meal,
Yes.
to needy students on a daily basis?
Yes.
What would that hot meal comprise of? Probably basic, but still it would
yes.
serve the purpose.
So probably you could be looking at a vegetable stew with some rice. You could be looking at pap and like dal or rice and dal.
No meat, because it's expensive, obviously.
It's not just that it's expensive, it's also we're trying to provide for everybody.
Right.
So we want to provide food that is culturally appropriate. And if we're going to provide meat, essentially, if it's pork, Muslims can't really eat
and
it.
it's not
Jews can't
halal,
eat it.
yes.
You know what I'm saying. So we're trying to keep this balance of
simplify it as possible and keep it as universal as possible.
Yes.
All right, that's wonderful. Would you know off the top of your head how many students are being fed by WCCO?
I would probably be I know that they probably provide about 1,000 lunches a day.
How are they
Plus
funded?
minus. We have a lot of collaborations. We have a lot of donations. If it's not from students, it's from organizations out there.
Or large corporates?
We try not to get involved with corporate corporations, because essentially we want to make it something that's going to spread to small scale farmers. We want to make it spread to just general people. Because if you look at I don't really want to speak about cooperations, but cooperations are kind of domineering in the market, and so essentially you'll find these small scale farmers aren't really able to sell their produce because the corporates are providing it cheaper, and they can't exactly afford to provide it cheaper. So what we also trying to do with the small scale farming and with our farming essentially is that we're providing nutritious food for, obviously it's high quality, but we're doing it for free, and we're doing it for the sake that you're going to learn skills, you're going to take these skills home, and you're going to be able to come and write exams the next day or be able to function, because we don't want you to miss your university, because WITS is the type of university, if you miss a lecture, I'm not sure about all modules, but I know with mine, if I miss a lecture, I'm lost. Even if I have my textbooks.
Right.
So I understand that struggle, and I don't want to see people that's struggling, and that is why that's why I get involved with all these organizations, just help uplift the community, not just the WITS community in terms of staff and students, but also the immediate, like, outside.
What are the challenges that face you guys being on all of these different communities? In our line, working very closely with WCCO, and I also know that you're involved with Assist, and you're going to tell us what's that all about. So right across the spectrum, what are the type of challenges that you guys are faced with?
Awareness, definitely awareness.
Awareness by the students themselves?
By everybody. I just think it's because hunger is not that widely of spread thing in terms of, oh my gosh, she's hungry and that's why she's missing school, or, you know, the people look at it more in terms of a school type of scenario, but they forget that there's still tertiary education and some people are still dealing with these issues. We're also struggling in terms of volunteers. Volunteers, not everybody can come because of the times, but you can always go. It doesn't really matter when you go. If you want to go, you can go.
But it is a challenge.
It is a challenge to get there, to whichever garden you obviously want to get to. I think we're also struggling in terms of, I think, maybe financing, because we obviously have to buy seeds, or we have to buy tools to do certain things, but also it's financing so that we are able to keep the club running, the society running.
What's going to happen, God forbid it doesn't go that route, but what's going to happen if, let's just assume people stop volunteering their time to tend to the gardens? If you don't have the manpower to look after those gardens,
that is definitely going to be a problem.
It's a huge threat to the garden project being closed down.
Yes. Luckily, though, we have been in collaboration with the University of Cape Town and the University of Western Cape. I'm not entirely sure how, but I know we have something going on there. But also, in terms of WITS, we want to try and get it into a green university. We want to make WITS a sustainable university. Our aim for our gardens is not that it's going to be okay for this week and then it's dead next week. We want a sustainable garden. We want sustainable farming. So we don't have, because of the struggling of the volunteering basis, but we're also in collaboration, I think, with PIMD and all those other peoples and I see Yakana or something. They helped us start up the West Garden on West. But they also, WITS gardeners also kind of get involved. And
you mean the gardening and maintenance staff?
Yes, they also get involved. So our plan is also not to just make the gardens solely rely on student volunteers or whichever volunteers, but to also have like a little bit of a regular type of interval type of thing with WITS, in terms of one of the things that the staff needs to do is try and maintain the gardens, and we'll teach them obviously the skills that they need to maintain these gardens, because if we're not there but they are there, so if the garden will still flourish and they will benefit as well. It's not that they're doing it for the sake, that's the job and it's the sake, because they will still benefit of it, because they will get harvest or they can take seeds home, whichever the case may be.
Now, it's not enough that it's your first year at university, you're involved with the MSA, you're involved with Inala, but you're also involved with an organization or a body at Wits University called Assist.
Yes.
And that means a couple of hours, 3 times a week,
Yes.
you're giving off your time to do what?
To tutor. So essentially, we go to Alexandra, one of the base where we're currently operating, and with a whole lot of volunteers from Wits University, and we go and tutor our high school students. We haven't really gotten into the primary section yet, so we're busy from grade 8 to grade 12. Whichever subjects they need help with, we help. Also, we kind of have this connection with the different schools and the students, and they tell us what they need. So if they need an English tutor, then we will ask one of our volunteers who is available, can you come and tutor English? It's not just one student that you're dealing with about 10 probably per grade, per subject. Sometimes we really struggle with volunteers, as volunteering it seems to be a problem in all these organizations.
I'm also thinking about continuity. So you have committed to these schools to do the tutoring.
Yes.
But perhaps you guys will be involved in your own studies and exams, etc., and you're not able to make it. What happens then to Assist and to those children?
So there's always definitely other students. We're not confined to a set group of students that are volunteering. Assist is open to anybody and any student.
But in terms of continuity of the program, so let's assume there's students that need maths tuition and
Yes.
children that needs English. Is there some sort of a handover so that they can pick up, the newer volunteers can pick up from where the older volunteers have left off?
Yes, we do have our own mini curriculum that we have going on. We do have like our little directors, so they manage, for example, the English curriculum or the maths curriculum or your science curriculum or whichever curriculum you're looking at. And then there's always a portfolio, so you always know where we're going. And we also keep in line with what the school is doing as well. So we take note of, okay, so this is what they're doing, this is what we need, and that is what we go and try and give to them when we go there, along with food. So we provide them with like a little basic lunch as well, like a bread and peanut butter jam sandwich.
So who prepares that? Is that
A volunteer thing as well.
is this outside of Inala?
Yes, outside of Inala. It's just so whichever volunteer which wants to bring the food, or sometimes one of the directors will, it's generally there's always something that's going to be there for the students so that they can concentrate. And also these students come from extremely poor homes, and you will find that they struggle concentrating, or I mean even the level of the work that they're doing, and you're asking yourself, how are they in grade 12 already? But it's sad to see, but that is why it's important to get involved with these volunteer organizations such as Assist, Inala, MSA, whichever place that you can do good, because even though you might not benefit in it in any way because you're constantly giving, you at the end of the day you can go home and have the satisfaction that you've done something good.
And as a Muslim, it is your duty to make a difference, and that's where we leave it. Jazakallah for sharing the amazing work being done by Inala, by Assist, and WCCO, and all of the other good works, MSA as well, happening on Wits and other campuses around the country. Keep it up and keep inspiring and touching lives in a positive way. Shukran indeed for being with us. That was Khalida Mohammed talking about all of these volunteer organizations that are assisting poor students on campus and off campus as well. And if you are there and haven't gotten involved, this is the time where you go in and you make a difference by being a volunteer. That's all we have time for. Thank you indeed for being with us on the show this morning. Thank you for your company. Also a big shout out to the production team. Take care on the roads, and as always, it is Assalamu alaikum and Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Ali.
Ya hala, 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا. يا هلا ويا